morning, boys and girls. How is everyone doing? All right, today's Bible story is actually a review story. So for the rest of the year, we're going to have some review stories and some that go clear back to the beginning of the year. So I'm wondering if you remember anything about Jesus and a storm. Okay. All right, so everywhere Jesus went, we know that crowds followed him everywhere, and they wanted to hear him talk about God the Father. They also wanted to see him make their sick friends well and to see him do other wonderful things. But Jesus knew that his disciples were with people all the time as they traveled with him. So he got into a boat with his disciples to go across the Sea of Galilee. Boys and girls, by the way, you might ask your mom or dad to look up on the internet Sea of Galilee, and it's a real place, and Jesus was really on the sea thousands of years, about 2,000 years ago. So that's just kind of a fun little fact that you could probably look up and see where our story takes place. So Jesus, he goes to the back of the boat, and he rests, and then he falls fast asleep because remember, Jesus had a body like ours, and so he would get tired as well. Well, very quickly though, a storm started and the wind began to blow and the water rolled up into big high waves around the boat. The waves were bigger than the boat and some waves began to fill the boat. The tall mountains all around the Sea of Galilee caused strong winds to blow down between the mountains. They made terrible storms on the water. This was a common thing that would happen. Well, the disciples, we know that they were fishermen, and they had been in many storms, and they knew what to do. So what would you do if you were in the boat and the water kept coming in? What would you do so your boat doesn't sink? Yeah, you'd start scooping out the water and get it out of your boat so it's not so heavy. Well, they scooped that water out as best as they could, but the storm was not stopping, and the big waves kept coming over the side of the boat, and that's when they started to get afraid. They were afraid the boat would sink. All this time, where was Jesus? Jesus was still sleeping in the back of the boat. Because the disciples were so afraid, they woke Jesus up and they said, "Jesus, don't you care about us? Don't you care that we might drown?" Do you think Jesus knew what was happening? Do you think he cared? Well, of course he cared. We know Jesus cares. Good. All right, so Jesus awakened from his sleep, opened his eyes, and he looked at the disciples. And he said, "Why are you afraid? Don't you trust me to take care of you?" And then he looked to the storm. Do you remember what he said? "Peace, be still." And the water, what happened to the water? It wasn't still stormy like this. To the disciples' surprise, suddenly the water stopped. The big high waves were gone, and the boat rested quietly on the water as if there had never been a storm. The sea was like glass, and the disciples said, "Who is this man, this Jesus, that even the winds and the seas obey him?" Do you remember that from Matthew 8:27? Even the winds and the seas obey him. Matthew 8:27. They knew that no one can make the storm stop suddenly like that except for God. God is the only one who can do that. So God is still with us to this day. He still helps us when we're afraid. Can you think of a verse that we can use? How about Psalm 56:3? Psalm 56:3. "What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee." Psalm 56:3. So whenever you're afraid or scared, or maybe you don't know that you're afraid or scared, but you feel this funny feeling in your belly, or your brain is thinking, "This doesn't make sense, I don't understand," you can remember these verses and these stories to help you know that Jesus, even though you can't see his body because his body's up in heaven, his spirit is with us all the time to help us not be afraid.